would it be to get better growth on your contour?
Certainly, that plays a role. It will give better growth on the contour, but the reason is that we don't need to broadcast it because the water is going to move it for us. So we're setting the system up so that water does all the work, not us. So if you set the system up so that the water is moving across your landscape, then it carries everything for you. You don't need to spread it out. You don't need to go to that. And every time it rains, it repeats. It does the same thing over and over. Every time it does it, the water moves it for you. It's a cheap way of running your farming operation. This is how the Australian landscape used to function. All we're trying to do is to get that function working again. So what's the common theme across today's presentation? Something we've talked about a lot. Gravity, yep, that's one of them. What else? Water. What else? Look at the landscape. Yep. Nutrient. There's one other that I really want you to say, but you haven't said it yet. Fertility, slow the flow, sunlight, cycles. This is fantastic. I'm getting way more than I wanted, but nothing that I need. I need one thing. High ground, yep. Challenge the way you think. Geez, these are really good. Nature, yep. What else?
Carbon.
What was that?
Carbon.
Carbon, yes. Sorry, out the back.
Using the free resources to do work for you.
Yep. There's one other thing. Starts with P and ends in S. Plants. Everything is managed by plants. This whole landscape was built by plants. Plants will rebuild the landscape again. What do you use your cattle to do? You use your cattle to recycle the plants. Yeah? So your landscape, your animals are the tools to manage the plants. Not to take them out, to manage them so that they grow bigger and stronger and better. Yep? But the key to understand is that plants manage everything. If you concentrate on getting plants back into your system, then that's how your system will grow. So by implementing natural sequence farming and restoring a natural landscape function, you're building natural capital, improving productivity, increasing your resilience to fire, flood and drought. Now that's a really important one. I was having this discussion with the FBA guys yesterday, is that all of these things, and you see when our government puts out grant applications for grants, you'll see an application because there was a fire, then you'll see a different application because there was a flood, and you'll see a different application when there's a drought. But you know they're all driven by the same thing. So we don't really need an application for each individual one, because if we carry out the roles that we're talking about, we actually solve the problem of all three. Does that make sense? Because when our landscape becomes dysfunctional, those three things start to be more prevalent. When our landscape is resilient, those things become less of a problem. Yep, still going to be there, but they're not the dramatic event that what they are today. So you think about a flood. What happens a lot of the time when we get a flood? Why is there a flood? Because when it rains on our landscape, instead of the water soaking in, it runs off. We've just done I don't know, has anybody seen our documentary that we've done recently? Rehydrate Australia? Yep. If anyone hasn't seen it, and there's no clarity in what I've just spoken about, go and have a look at that, because it might give you a bit more clarity. But in there, we went to a property out at Charleville. Everyone knows where Charleville, at Kaladi actually. And those guys out there, they say that a section of their country, the Mulga country, has a runoff of 90%. So 90% of the water runs off of that landscape yearly. Do you think that's a problem? Yeah? And what do you think's happening about that? Not much. That would be a major problem. I would consider that a major problem. If that was my landscape, I would say that was a problem. Those guys are trying to fix it. But where are they getting help? They're not. Wouldn't that be a fairly major area that you would think that we would invest some money in to try and prevent that water running off so that we can get that landscape functioning? Yeah, I would have thought so. But this is the problem. I don't think we focus enough on where the problems are, because that problem then compounds as it moves down through the system. And someone further down suffers the effect of the flooding. What happens when we have big floods? We have major destruction. Our creeks and our rivers get eroded out. Where do you see a lot of money getting spent? Fixing our creeks and our rivers, where the problem is on all of the landscapes that we manage, which is an easy fix. We can fix it by how we manage our animals. That's key. How do we manage our animals? If we need to put in contours and ponds and things, which in most cases, in the short term, it's probably a good idea. But if we can manage those two things, then we change the whole impact of particularly flood and drought. Because as soon as you start slowing that water down, you reduce the accumulation of water at the bottom of the system rapidly. Therefore, flooding becomes less of an issue. I was working with, how am I going for time? 15. Jesus, that's bloody good, isn't it? I'll just keep rabbiting on here for a little bit longer, and then I was worried I was going to take up Dick's time, so I wouldn't want to do that because he'd probably get annoyed with me for the rest of the day. I was doing a project with Lismore Council. You all know where Lismore is in New South Wales. You know that they have a slight issue with flooding down there every so often. Anyway, so I was working with those guys, and I think we ran a thing where we had 80 people come to courses we ran down there, put on by the Lismore Council, which was fairly forward-thinking of them. It all died in the water after a while, which that's what tends to happen. But at least we got 80 people in that area through, and it started a process where those 80 people are now showing others what they could do around their landscape. Anyway, I did an interview with the ABC radio, and I said to the girl who was doing the interview, I said, if we were able to do this work across the watersheds around Lismore, we could reduce the flood by 2 metres. Now that was a stab in the dark. It's a gut feel that I reckon we could do that. Now when the flood was at 14 metres, 2 metres doesn't sound like very much, does it? But 2 metres was the difference between houses being lost and not. So it is a big difference. And how do you do that? You can't stop the water moving, but what you can do is slow down the speed at which it takes to get from the top of the system to the bottom of the system. That means that the water at the bottom has time to move on before the water at the top gets there. Where currently what happens, it all just goes and all meets at the same time. And so therefore you have an issue with flooding. And there I think that particular flood event, I don't remember the numbers now, I think it cost $22 million, or might have been in the billions, I can't remember now. That's the damage that it caused, that flood. So you would think that this stuff is worthwhile. How about you guys? You probably don't deal with flooding too much down here, do you? On the Fitzroy? Yep, you do. So you would have to, if you think that the system that feeds the Fitzroy, if you work up there in that upper watershed, is there going to be still a flooding problem down here? Probably not. Probably not, except in really big events. So that's the impact all of you play on how this system functions all the way through. So if you want to learn, if you want to know any more, we run a course. We do a 4-day in-person course. And just last week, Hamish has spent the last 6 to 12 months creating an online course. Now, for me, online courses, I would sign up to an online course and probably never turn up again. So I don't know what the rest of you are like, but I think an online course is a great place to go if you want to know and you can't afford 4 days away. But if you want to know more about this stuff, there are a couple of ways. I would really recommend having a look at that Rehydrate Australia documentary. It's on YouTube. It's free. It's there for you to look at and share it with friends, or if you've got any friends, share it with those, and just get people thinking about this stuff. It's really, really important. Otherwise, you can go onto our website or whatever. Ring me, whatever you want to do.